This is another documentation video of the Hopper programming language. I'm assuming that you're already familiar with one of the curly brace and semicolon languages, preferably one of the modern ones like Java or C#, but C or C++ will do as well. So I'm in the Hopper ecosystem now. I'm going to go to my samples folder, and I already have a file called test.hs. HS is the extension for the Hopper programming language. Hopper source code is what it stands for. This is the Hopper editor. It's written in Hopper. And we're going to, if we look on the menu here, we'll see there's a build with an F7 and a save with Control S. So those are the keys I'm hitting, the shortcut keys. So I'm hitting F7 right now to build this empty file. And if we look at the bottom of the screen, it's shown us we have an error. And if we double click on here, it'll take us to the position of the error, although we're already there. And it wants the word program. So let's use the compiler to teach us what the syntax is. So we put in the word program, hit Control S for save. You can see it's saved. And hit F7 again. Now we got another error. Program name identifier expected, and it wants it on this first line here. So after the word program, it needs an identifier. Now it needs to start with an uppercase character, but I'll explain that in a different video. So my program, and we hit F7, Control S and F7, and now it's expecting, if you look on the bottom line here, it's expecting left curly brace. And we'll make it look pretty reasonable. And you can guess that there's going to be a right curly brace wanted as well. Another thing to notice is on the top right, the name of the path of the current file I'm in is currently red, or some shade of red. That means it's modified. As soon as I press Control S, it changes back to green. Right? So we F7 again. And now is the tricky bit, where it differs from the other languages. Its program requires entry point. Now, if this were a C-style language, you'd put in main like that. That would be the sort of abbreviated version of it. You could put your arguments in here. It normally has a, I don't know, I can't remember if it has an int or a void return value. But that's the entry point for a C or C++ program, something like that. In Hopper, we just don't include the word main because if it's going to always be there and always be main, why bother? And there's no arguments in there because arguments are dealt with differently in a similar way to how they are with C#. They're actually a system function to get the arguments that were passed to you. Let's try F7 without saving. So I'm going to build with the changes in my file. I'll get prompted to save. So yes, it goes green, it builds, and we have our first successful Hopper program. So I don't have a debugger for Windows, only for the remote applications, which is kind of funny. But we can Control F5 to run this and nothing will happen. And if we go back to the console and we type test, our program did nothing. Okay, we're getting somewhere. Let's go back. So let's make it do something. Let's get arguments. So the arguments on the command line are a list of strings, and that is the syntax for a list of strings for defining a variable with a list of strings. So that will compile. But we want arguments. And there's a system method called arguments. It's actually, so now it's going to tell us it doesn't know. If you look at the bottom of the screen, arguments is not defined. So the way you bring in other units from your system is with the user statement. The user statement is, it's a bit like using in C#, or a bit like not quite include. It's a combination of include and linking with a library if you were in C++. But it actually comes from Turbo Pascal. in between version 3 and version 4 of Turbo Pascal, they added units. Once Nicholas Wirth added, came up with modular 2, and they saw it was a good idea. So Pascal added units. So we have units, and the source code for the units is all included in the ecosystem. So if we look for source, we look under the system folder, and there's a System.hs, which is where arguments is. So now if I build, it succeeded. It found arguments. Let's go look in systems. Now the interesting thing, the way you navigate a project here is you just double click on the path. And that's now opened. Now our current file is system.h in that folder, but it's showing us that our project, the top file, the only one with the word program in it, because all the others have the word unit in them, it is sitting here. And we can always navigate back by clicking there. So we can navigate between files pretty quickly. Now, if we scroll down here, we can find arguments here. And that's where it comes from. And it's a system method. Actually a system property, a getter, to get the command line arguments that were passed to this executable when it was executed. And the syntax here is unit in name rather than program in name, and it has a curly brace at the beginning and a curly brace at the end, and then it has its definitions in between. And it can include other units. So this is how a unit works and how a program works. So let's try and do something with those units, with those arguments. So we can iterate through them with for each, since it's since a list of strings is a collection, we can iterate through them. So for each argument in arguments, the type of item in the collection is variant, so that for each works for everything. It can work for any kind of collection. So you don't give a type here, you give a variant type. So that should compile. And now we want to do something with those, so let's just print them out to the console. So println argument. And again, if I try to compile that, it's going to tell me, if you look at the bottom of the screen, println is not defined. If I double click here, it'll go to where the error took place. And this is because I need to include another unit. So this unit is also in the system folder, and it's called screen. And if we go navigate to it, we can quickly see what's in screen. And it has what you'd expect: cursor stuff, columns, rows, clearing the screen, drawing characters, and there's our println. And it's got several overloads. So different arguments can be passed to the same method with the overloads. And we're using this one down here. We're using println with a string, which then calls other versions of println. A lot of the system library is actually written in Hopper, so that all these variations on print and overloads are actually written in Hopper, and there's only the one for printing a new line, which is a system method, or printing a character in colors. There's only 3 that are actually going into the system that are written in this case, C# in the runtime. But a lot of Hopper is written in Hopper. Okay, let's build that. It builds successfully now. And now if I run it, nothing will happen, because it happened very quickly. But if we go back out to the console, we run it, it worked. But if we run it with some arguments, we see our arguments. Anyway, thank you for watching. That's all about programs and units.